Brian, you are the founder of Friday Harbour, and your mission is healing cancer one night at a time. How did you come up with the name? Like, what is the origin and background story of Friday Harbour?
Well, it comes from an experience, by the way,
Mhm.
and it's evolved into one of my favorite days. So it's kind of serendipitous. But um, after several attempts to resign from my job at Shell, after 33 years, I've had three instances where I've mentally said to myself, today's the day I'm going to turn in my resignation, and it happened to be on Fridays, believe it or not. But this day, I told a friend of mine who was working with me that today was the day for me to go ahead and find something else to do. And she said, "Well, you can't quit your job because you love to eat." And I, of course, went, "Yes, you're right." She goes, "Why don't you consider that nonprofit that you thought about or that you've mentioned?" And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know." And she goes, "Well, let's talk about it." And it was lunchtime, by the way, and that'll be relevant later. But we ended up going into my office and closing the door. And for several hours, we talked about this. And what we realized is we want to do something to help someone. And we started to think about it, and we said, well, what is it that we wanted to do? And or who did we want to impact? Or all these things are just going around our heads. But cancer became a subject. And it became a clear subject because her boss, her manager at the time, was taking and bringing her husband to Houston from Livingston, which is about an hour plus away, to get treatments. And they had an apartment in Houston. And we knew about this, but again, never dug deeper. Then we thought about several engineers that worked in our group that had either gone through the cancer journey.
Yeah.
And so cancer kept coming up. And then she
Mhm.
asked me about, she goes, "Isn't your brother going through cancer
Mhm.
treatment?" And it was my oldest brother. And and I reflected on it and I said, "Yeah." And she goes, well, tell me about that. And I said, well, and I was trying to remember because it was just automated. My mom was already doing what she chose to do, and maybe she didn't choose to do, maybe it chose her. But I started
Yes.
talking about it. And when we again landed on cancer, we went through a lengthy conversation about my mom's journey and that was the part that kind of solidified that we were going to do something about cancer. We still didn't know
Yeah.
what we were going to do. But when I started telling her about the moments that my mom would call me, which were typically when I was traveling, she would we had a way for her to get me to answer the phone. There was a code that she would use, and I remember telling me young that some of the toughest times was when she called me and said, "I don't want to drive home tonight. It's 3 hours. They were going to Temple, Texas. Can you rent me a hotel room? Can you get me a hotel room? Because there's a courtyard right next to the hotel. I mean, to the hospital, literally connected." And so I remember just talking through this with Myung, going, "Yeah, I remember I had to go through trouble of faxing a document back then, saying that I was going to pay for the room so that my mom could get in there without issue and check in and just go rest." And so that's kind of the origin of why we started. But the name itself, when we had gone to MD Anderson to question whether or not this was a need, because Myung actually looked at me and said, "Well, that's what we're going to do." And I said,
Okay.
"What?" And she goes, "Well, we're going to figure out how to help people with some kind of housing."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay." I mean, I just booked rooms. And she goes, "Well, not everybody has a Brian." And I remember these moments where she was just telling me this.
Yeah.
Again, all I wanted to do was go find something else to do. Before we left the office that day, I told her there were three things that I really wanted to govern what we do. And that was that we have an instant impact on someone, that we make it easy for them to take advantage of it, and that we have fun.
Mhm.
So what did we do? We went right back to the Margarita Friday crew, and we told them we were going to start this nonprofit
Wow.
and that we might need some volunteers. We didn't know. And that crew jumped in. As a matter of fact, some of our first years were filled with volunteers from Margarita Friday. But the
Wow.
name, we didn't come up with the name till after we've gone to MD Anderson and proven that housing, particularly safe, clean, temporary housing that's at the moment of need, was a true problem. and it totally blew us away. So when we knew that it was that we were on to something, we said, what are we going to call it? And this was back in our office, probably a couple of weeks later. We were just calling it the Cancer Nonprofit, but we were
Uh-huh.
sitting there, and we really worked hard on this, on making it more difficult. But when we thought about it, I said, well, me Young, we owe it to the Margarita Friday group. So why don't we call it? And she goes, we can't call it Margarita. And I go, well, probably not. I said, well, what about Friday? And she goes, Friday, okay, you're on to something. We wrote it down. And then
Mhm.
the head of social worker, who said safe, reliable, clean. I could only think of safekeeping and harbor.
Yeah.
I've always loved lighthouses.
Yeah.
Never been in one, but always loved them. And
Love
so
it.
we said Friday Harbor.
And Brian, that's what I
Yeah.
thought about with the name, like a
Mm.
lighthouse or something with a boat or something out in the ocean somewhere. So that's why we asked the question, to find out, how did you come up with that name?
It was really that Margarita Friday. So a group of friends getting together and doing what we do, but somehow someone seeing and pulling the light out of that and going and doing something good with it. So I
Yeah.
really believe that's critical when you think about life-changing decisions that we can all make. But so the Friday part of that, Margarita Friday and Harbor. And I'll tell you, I called a fraternity brother of mine that day when we came up with the name, and I said he used to doodle and draw when we were in college, and I said, can you come up
Mhm.
with the logo for me? And the logo that you see now is that logo that he drew up,
Wow. Amazing.
and he was not happy with it. He was like, I don't like it. And I go, it tells the story.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's Friday Harbor. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Great story, Brian.
Yeah. A beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're
And
welcome.
you already mentioned, of course, your brother and losing your brother to cancer, and going through that process. How did you gain the strength? And you've already talked about it as far as starting the mission, but how did you gain the strength to help others that have gone through something similar as yourself and your family?
I'll try and go with three thoughts that are coming to mind. There's an organization, the Skinner Leadership Institute out of DC, Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner, and they do a program called the Master Series of Distinguished Leaders. I took this program maybe about 10 years ago in DC, and one of the things it talked about was that they helped us to uncover, and these were for mid-level Black managers within corporate and community and nonprofit space. And while there's a lot I can share about that energy, was that they talked about everyone has a purpose.
Yeah.
When you may shy it away or push it away because it doesn't align with either your friends or your networks or where you are in your life, but your
Yes.
purpose typically shows itself in many ways well before you receive it. But it's the promise that matters. And I've known my purpose for a long time, and probably through my family and my grandmother and my mom and others. But the promise to live into my purpose is that underlying that still carries me today, because it has not gotten easier in 15 years.
Yeah.
It's
I can
gotten
imagine.
clearer,
Yeah.
but not easier. So what I will say to you is that what gave me the courage to do this was, as we were forming Friday Harbor, going through all the paperwork and the other things that you don't think about when you go, let's form a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we were going through that,
Right.
yeah, I realized that I said my brother was still living, and so he was on the downslope, but there was still promise, if you will, or in some clinical trials that he chose not to take. But what I will tell you in the one courage was when I was sitting with my brother on June 15th. We started this in May. On June 15th, he was in the room at my mom's house, and he was just in and out. And I said, something told me I got to tell him that we're starting this. So I went and woke him up, and made him sit up, and he was barely breathing by the end. But I said, man, I want to tell you something. I think some friends and I are starting something that's going to help brothers like you, moms like mom, and any others kind of get through this a little easier. And he looked at me and he goes, that's cool. And we sat there for what felt like 20 minutes. And he looks at me and he goes, can I lay that down? And I was like, sure, sure, sure. And I had to lay him back down. But he died a week later on the 22nd. So for me, when I'm in my darkest or quietest or toughest moment, I think back that I made a commitment to him. Now that was one. The other was, I think when you think about helping others, again, when I say my journey to where I was at that time in 2009, my fraternity taught Helping Hand. I I'm I won't say I'm the best church goer, but I am the best church believer. And I believe that when you do force yourself sometimes to get up on that Sunday and go,
Yes.
and just get in there, that you're going to hear the message that you were supposed to hear.
Yes.
And it's crazy how often it happens. It's not because I'm not doing good work. It's just that you need that little oomph that says, yes, your work is not done yet. So that's the second. And then I think the third one piece around this courage is that the power of seeing someone step into their journey a little bit lighter and a little bit freer because you were part of helping is incredibly powerful. And let me tell you, cancer has become one of those things where we were saying it really lightly, cancer, to now I say cancer because cancer is real.
Yes.
And the
Very
fact
much
is we're not curing cancer, we're healing. And people have argued with me on that. But when a patient or family member gets me on the phone and says, thank you for that one night, we were able to catch our breath. That is the courage. I'm sitting there going, and I tell my team, and they probably are tired of me saying it, y'all can be tired, wore out of money, I don't care. But if you think about a patient battling cancer, how tired and
Yes.
how tired are they? I said, so just do what you can. And so I think the thought that the next patient that we help in whatever way can go forward and do what they were destined to do while they're battling cancer, that's courage. That's daily courage for us.
That most definitely. Thank you. And I liked the fact that your brother, even before he passed away a week later, was able to find humor, some type of humor, and make you laugh. So that touched me just to even hear you.
Was that his personality, Brian? Was he always like a kind of like straight shooter?
He was our oldest brother, and he was wise, and he was cool.
Okay.
And for him to say it in that moment, I'm going to capture this someday in writing, because that day when he was in and out, it was one of those moments that I didn't want to take because it just was not a comfortable place. Yes. But I'm so thankful that I did pull him up. I did get to tell him this, and I know that he's right there with us along. But yeah, when he said that's cool, I was like, my brother's still here.
That was his thumbs up, and he's definitely smiling down on all of the amazing work that you and your group are doing. So
yes, for sure.
Let's talk about the free lodging.
Okay.
What was the first hotel ask? Like, tell us how that worked. Like, did you ask a hotel, or how did that come together to help the patients and the families? And how many hotels or lodging places do you all have today?
Okay.
For Friday Harbour.
Well, we are in, as I think you saw in our press release, or our message was that this is the year of movement. We've been 15 years at this journey, and someone suggested, a gentleman that I was recruiting for the board, he goes, I think you've done it all backwards, Brian. He goes, usually folks go and ask for a bunch of money and then go start something and build it. He goes, you've kind of built it, and now you're looking for the money. And I said, yeah, because I kind of had a job during the last 15 years, as did all of my volunteers and board members. And so this is kind of what we do when we can do it. So with that, how did we find the first kind of partner? And
Yeah, yes,
that
yeah.
from a hotel standpoint was I sat down with two of my friends. One was a board member first, and then this other one joined later. But I told them about this idea, and I said I want to go to hotels, and I want to tell them that we're going to do this housing for patients and families, and they're going to give me some rooms because they can write that off, and they're going to be helping the community. And within 12 seconds, Frank Cano told me that I was crazy. He said hotels are in the business to make money,
Yeah.
and while you have a great idea, that's not sustainable. Good luck. And I remember that night going home saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because my mind was blown and I
Yeah.
was so disappointed. But what he did continue on with was you have to come up with a plan that makes sense for the hotel. Just because, and he goes, so they need to be a part, they need to see themselves in this journey. So the Holiday Inn has been our partner for 15 years. Holiday Inn at NRG Park in Houston, right next to the football stadium. And they're right in the medical center. And we knew that hotels were because my mom, I said, that seems
Yeah.
easy. We don't need to own anything. We don't need to rent anything. I said, when my mom told me she wanted to check in, go to her
Yes.
room, and not talk to anyone if she didn't have to, what better place? So we had to come up with our plan for why a hotel made sense before we approached Holiday Inn. And so that's what we did. We built kind of a model that said, and Mi Young helped in this. I said, why don't we charge the patients, $50? We did some research on other lodging,
Okay.
and they all had a nominal fee that they asked of the patient or family member. And I said, well, Mi Young, why don't we do that? And she goes, well, Brian, if a patient can't afford $25, why would we charge them?
Mm,
And I went, what? But she was right. And she
yeah.
goes, so she said, let's build a model and let's go talk to the one hot hotel and find out what they require. And what we found confirmed what Frank said. A hotel is in a position by which they need to fill rooms. And
Yeah.
most of the time, unless there's a big event, they aren't full. So you need to give them a value proposition that takes advantage of those rooms that aren't going to be filled. And there's already a sunk cost.
Okay.
If you can cover that cost and maybe with plus and offer that, they're going to take you seriously. And then the negotiation begins.
Yes. That makes
Because
sense.
so that's what we had to do. And let me tell you, 15 years, because we've been a nonprofit, I call us a club, because we still have to build the scalability of our
Yeah.
model. That's why this year's the movement year. That for 15 years, we've been able to go to Holiday Inn and say, look, we are going to give you a budget every month of what we think we can pay for. And if you'll make sure those rooms are available, we'll fill them. And we did that. And I think 5 years in, they said, you've done what you said you would do. Let's talk about how we can set aside more rooms. And let me tell you,
Oh,
the hotels can make a ton of money off of these rooms.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a rate now that folds into several of our programs from a cost perspective that really gives us, I believe, and one, the ability to deliver for 15 years, but to then scale that. So we worked a deal by which we committed to a certain number of rooms based on our budget. We went to the hotel and said this part is equally important. There are no shortage of hotels around the country. But a hotel that recognizes the moms that are taking their sons to cancer treatment and
yes.
don't need a lot of pomp and circumstance and drama, that they need someone behind the counter that recognizes I may not need the small talk. I may need to just get my key and go to my room. And that was important. When we talked to the Holiday Inn about that, they assured us that their team, as close as they are to the medical center, that they knew that that's why patients and families come back and pay hundreds of dollars per night to stay there.
Wow.
So that's how we selected Holiday Inn. We are now working to build a strategy because our growth plan is to have 5 of those hotels in and around the medical center to accomplish our mission, and then really build a sustainable model with that, and then offer that to other cancer centers around the country.
what is that message you would say to people that have to deal with cancer to where it might stop them right where they're at? Like, what is your advice? Dealing with your brother's cancer journey, what is your advice on how people can get through that journey, that process?
Great question. I believe that first we have to recognize we're on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
We're not on, whether you wake up every day and you're fully healthy, you're
Yes.
still on a journey, which
Yes.
means that today is the day that you can do something awesome, even if it's something small.
Yeah.
The I'm going to miss her name, but she owns a jewelry store, Kendra Scott.
Yeah,
I was about to say
Kendra
Scott.
Scott.
I first met her, stunning, but the way she talked about why she does what she does across her business and her lifelong commitment was built on trust of the human condition, that humans just wake up every day wanting to do something good.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And so her message, her tagline is do more than you don't. Do more than you don't. So when you talk about what it is that someone can do that's sitting there going, how do I get through this? First, recognize it's a journey.
Right.
And two, know that you already have the capacity to do something even while you're going through what you're going through, which is why many of these patients that I get to talk to, and I don't get to talk to a lot of them, but the ones that I do, they usually are telling me, I want to get through this so I can go do what I was destined to do. That we've got to trust that even in the pain and the tears and the exhaustion and all, that probably what's weighting them down more than any of that is that they're not doing what they really want to do. If it's you're a writer, write one page while you're waiting on the next appointment, but they need the tools to do that. Yes. So we can't expect them to do it, and the hospital can't give you a computer because they can't. So where's the nonprofit that we might connect to in Charity Field Day that can say, Brian, for every one of your patients that might need a computer, we'll bring it. So I think we got to recognize that and help people to see that they're on a journey, and we're here to help them get through their journey. Two, that they can do something, because if we give them time, if we ask them, what do you love to do? They'll tell you. Yeah. And then you can then figure out if you have the ability to help them get connected to that. That's what I would say. And I'm saying that to my team too, who all think they're busier. My mom used to say, you're the busiest guy to not own the company, because I used to tell her I was always busy. But I realize even now, and I'm going to tell you this because it matters, is that most people think I'm doing something 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. God knows that I sleep well. Okay. And I sleep long. But when I'm awake, my hours are spent. Where do you need me? Yes. And I think that we have the capacity to do that. And we tend to take most of that capacity to our grave. And I don't think that that's what we want to do. So that's what I would say with respect to that. I think you have another question.
That's perfect, Brian. And so Tasha's really good at asking, what is that question you normally ask people?
Uh-oh.
Well, it's either a fun fact, or it's when's the last time you laughed. But we were noticing earlier, are you a pet owner?
That's my friend. She's I'm up visiting my twin goddaughters, and they've got a rescue. June is her name, and yes,
we didn't know if the pet wanted to make an appearance, So.
Oh no, June is she's the twins are home now, so she's probably roaming with them. But I was a pet owner for 19 years, Ringo, and he would come up and visit with me. But and maybe a year from now, I'll be ready for another one. Yeah.
No, this was really great information, the backstory, all of what you provided, and so I didn't know this existed beforehand, so thank you so much for being able to make us aware.
You're welcome.
And because you do so much, and you've already said you sleep well and you rest well, but also too, how do you refuel? I mean, aside from your resting, what is it that you do for yourself? Because that's important for us as well, to be able to take care of yourself. What is it that you do, or any fun facts, or how
there's one fun fact is that I'm a twin, and so when something doesn't work out, I tell him it was him that did it.
Are you really a twin?
Say again.
Are you really a twin?
I am Brian Keith
Oh,
Hall,
what is
Bruce
that?
Kevin Hall. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
And so he was at the golf tournament with me. He's a direct opposite of me, but he loves this mission. And he said, I'm going to go out there and just walk the course. And I said, okay, do you? And he did. He was just every corner we turned, there he was walking. I was like, he likes to walk. But he's a good guy, and he's on our board, and wonderful. But what do I do? I've seen a baseball game in every major league park in North America. Now that's old ones and new ones.
Okay.
And baseball's that's my relief. I can go watch toddlers play baseball if someone would just let them crawl with the bat. But sports is really where I go to get away, and so I do that. The second thing that I do is drive. I find even now that I meditate several times a day. So when I'm driving, the folks that are changing 7 lanes at one time don't really get to me as much as they used to, because I go, maybe they're late to work, or maybe they, going to get an ice cream and they just saw the X, whatever that is. But how do you build a cocoon around yourself so that you find a peace? And then the third thing that I find is truly helpful, and this is deep, but it's really fun, and it's find the joy in everything.
Yeah.
The older I get, the constant and you can't read it, you can't look in a paper or look on TV without hearing all the things that are wrong with the world. And what I found is when you can literally, maybe force yourself is not the right way, but see the good in everything. It's not that you can't see the bad, but if you look through and see the good, that's like, wow. So what will I say to that is that this past week, our golf tournament, hundreds of things went well. One of my board members called me and talked about the one thing that didn't. And I said, let me let that happen, because sometimes you have to just let it out. And then I said, now tell me 3 things that went exceptionally well.
Yes.
And when she did, I said, good, that's how we're going to end our call. And she texts me later. She goes, I don't know how long I talked to you, but I know that I was letting it all out. And I said, yes, that's fine. She goes, but thank you for letting me see what went well.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't see that because we're always focused on the negative,
Yes,
and then ending on a positive note definitely does help.
It does. It really does, because that's the energy that you take into your next whatever. And that's where, now I'm going to be, because you by now, I say a lot. I will tell you that the thought of eating and eating a meal in a place with a view is something that we take fully for granted. We sit at our dining room table instead of going out on the porch. It's that when you're eating a meal by yourself, but more importantly, eating one with someone else, find a view, because that is time where you're feeding your soul, you're feeding your body, and guess what? You can feed off of each other. So
and you have to be intentional with that too, because I had some lemon water, warm lemon water, and I just sat there and I said, before I give my time, my energy to anybody else, I'm just going to take it for me, and that's what I did in that moment.
And you can do that anywhere that you are.
Yeah.
And so
that's
it.
Anyway, I love to have a warm mug of warm water or tea, and just kind of hugging the mug is a good comfort. But also too, as women in media, journalists, and being a writer, I love to people watch because it taps into my creative spirit. I can people watch and then just come up with all kind of different stories internally. So I say that to say, whatever it is that we do, that we have, that allows us to relax and just breathe in and breathe out, is something that we should always make sure that we're doing on a daily basis, or just enough to keep living. Brian, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you. This has been fun. The topic was serious, but then there were also some light moments that we also appreciated. Sure. We also learned some things, and we definitely want to be able to be media that amplifies your message, for Friday Harbor. So thank you so much for your time and energy and spending your afternoon with us, with Trisha and Tasha, the Twins of Media.
I love it. It's a joy, and whatever makes your heart beat really fast that
Yeah.
is good for you. And let me tell you, my heart was beating fast before we got on because
Oh,
I'm a doer. I love doing this work, and I just want to help people to see that if they've got something else that they want to do, it's possible. You
It's
just got to
yes.
possible.
start. Just
It's
start.